Hello and welcome to the Voices of the Learning Network, the podcast that connects and amplifies voices across the learning and development community. I'm Bill Banham, a board member at the Learning Network, and I'm thrilled that you're joining us today. Today's guest has built his career around challenging the status quo in digital learning. With over 2 decades of experience across hospitality and learning tech, Caleb Foster has seen firsthand how uninspiring e-learning can disengage rather than empower. Driven by a mission to spark curiosity and emotional connection in learners, Caleb has spent years exploring how to move beyond simply delivering information to creating experiences that truly resonate. Caleb believes that when learners connect on an emotional level, they don't just absorb knowledge, they start to believe in change and drive real impact inside their organizations. And in this conversation, we're going to dig into Caleb's journey, his perspective on what makes learning meaningful, and how L&D pros can design experiences that create lasting transformation. Caleb, how are you doing today? Thank you for joining me on the pod.
I'm good, thank you. What a delightful introduction. I couldn't have said it better than myself.
All right, tick. I'll take that. Thank you, sir. You've had a varied career. Myself, I worked in hospitality in bars and whatnot, hotels for years. I loved it. So you had a background in hospitality before you got into the world of learning. I wonder, from your background in hospitality, what principles about people, service, or experience design have proved most transferable and continue to influence your L&D practice today?
Like, hospitality is a fabulous environment, and so it sounds really obvious, but it's full of people, and it's full of people that want to deliver a great service. And generally, to get the best out of people, you need to touch an emotional cue inside someone. Now, that's different for everyone, but I keep saying there's a power, there's a spark inside someone. And if you find that connection, that, like, you know it yourself, that if you respond to this emotional connection in something, you then become so much more curious about it and want to start investigating more. And hospitality is a great sort of bed to observe people. What makes people go the extra mile to deliver outstanding service, or what makes people go, I'm just here for a job? You know, there's a big difference, and usually it's that energy, that emotional connection inside someone.
Okay, so it sounds like you're a big believer that the culture of an organization comes from the top down. So if you can be an inspiring leader and get folks on board with the mission, then they'll bring that to your customers, to your partners, and so on and so forth.
No, actually, I think so.
Hmm.
Culture isn't top down. I think culture is everywhere. I think you cannot. So my belief is you cannot impose a culture. That's just not how culture works. Culture is this thing that exists because of the environment and the people in an organization. Now, like, leaders cast a massive shadow and influence that. So their behaviors, their language, their tone, the actions that a leader takes influences that culture. But we've all seen micro cultures in teams ourselves. So the culture is, how do you create that great environment to allow people to flourish and find their own voices?
Interesting. I don't want to focus too much on this because that ain't the point of this particular conversation, but that's interesting. Maybe I should have used the word mission, or to use Simon Sinek's terminology, the why of a company. Then,
Yeah, yeah.
people join a company because they identify, ideally they identify with the why of the mission of that company. What are your thoughts around
I
that?
think we're seeing that more and more, you know, that people are connecting with an organization based on their values and their direction and how they are made to feel inside an organization. We've gone so much beyond people just going, I want a job and I want to get paid. It's about connection to a purpose.
We could do a whole episode just on this, Caleb, but we're not going to. We're going to we're going to continue through. Was there a specific turning point when you realized that traditional approaches weren't just underperforming, but actively disengaging learners? And if so, how did that shape your philosophy around digital learning?
So it wasn't really until so I worked in Compass Group, the largest hospitality business in the world, and in their central team. And we always thought that design was the connecting component to why people sort of engage more. But it wasn't until a little bit later that you go, there's a visual language that needs to cue up with a tonality of great digital learning. But it was a little bit later that someone said, "Oh, that really made me stop and think. That really engaged me." And when you say why, you go, "What's the stories you told?" It was, it was how you presented it and hearing different, people in that piece of learning. But when you really scrape away at that, you go, well, what made you think a little bit more? Oh, I resonated with their story. I understood a little bit more. I could empathize with their story. And then the more you get to that, the more you go, oh, it's an emotional trigger. Forever, what you hear in organizations is, I've got a need to put this into digital learning, and here's the content that I want to show you. And you go, but that's not going to that's not going to make an impact just showing that information. Like, yourself, if you watch a program or a movie, you connect with that movie because you like the characters. Well, if you scrape away from it, what is it you like about that? Oh, I like the way that they're a bit sneaky, or I like that they're a great person. You start connecting with that on an emotional level, and it's no different in learning.
Many organizations, Caleb, still frame learning as a compliance task or a tick box exercise. That's just the reality. What strategies have you seen work to shift that mindset towards a culture where learning feels energizing, relevant, and maybe even aspirational?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I think the word compliance it's not a dirty word. That's the nature of it. There's a compliance requirement, to do this piece of learning. But what compliance learning doesn't have to equal is just showing lots of content and then going, you've looked at that content, let's tick a box to make sure that we're compliant. So when you really ask the question, why do you want people to do this learning? It's generally to say, I need them to read some content, but I need them to do something different than they were doing yesterday, or continue the great work that they're doing. In order to do that, you still need an emotional trigger for someone to go, oh, I'll get on and do that.
Okay, I'm picking up a thread here, a humanistic thread coming in your
Well,
answers. Very
and,
good.
and that's the reality, isn't it? That we are all humans and we're connected by the conversations and the experiences that we all share. And when did you ever go down the pub and someone say to you, do you know what, before we have this conversation and sup a pint, can you just read that PDF for me and make sure that everything's okay before we continue?
Yeah, I can't remember a time when that happened. So you've managed sizable learning technology investments and overseen award-winning programs, Caleb. Congratulations. What do you see as the critical factors in ensuring that spend translates not only into adoption, but also into measurable performance impact?
Well, I think there's a common myth that measuring people's feelings, emotions, sentiment, connection is difficult, and it absolutely isn't. There's a way to measure all of that. It's just that is a bit more difficult than measuring how many clicks in an e-learning course people have done, how many people have completed a mandated piece of learning, and then celebrating, oh, surprise, surprise, 90% of our people have done this learning because they've been made to do it. Like, so that's vanity. But there's a myth to say it's difficult to measure sentiment and feeling, and it isn't. And so if we know that connecting people on an emotional basis to then become a bit more curious is really powerful, then let's start a project off by saying, let's think about the measurement of people's feelings, first of all, design that, and make sure that the program follows that through.
Okay. Whenever I'm hosting a show, I always like to offer our listeners tangible takeaways. So, given that you emphasize the power of emotional connection in learning, Caleb, can you now share a concrete example where tapping into emotion created a breakthrough in behavior change or organizational outcomes?
Yeah, so we've been working with a large hospitality business, and so we created a number of mini modules that started life out as protected characteristics, but they pretty quickly changed to inclusion, belonging on a number of different agendas, actually. And the way that we tackled that is the design language really connected with the actual wording and the tone of that, but it led with an element of curiosity, and it wasn't showing all the information. It was about, this is what happens, learn from other people's experiences and take some information from that in your own way, but then commit to something that you think is connected to you. And so we really led with a project that said, this is the sort of subjects we want to cover, but this definitely isn't Wikipedia. And so it was, how do we open people's minds to become a little bit more curious? And that has got so much traction in terms of, oh, we thought it was going to try and teach us about all these different things that are going on and be really condescending. And actually, we cut more information than we included, and it's had the desired effect.
Okay, love that. Thank you. Lots of companies want results like yesterday. Of course, that's another sad reality. And L&D teams are often asked to deliver quick results while tackling deep cultural or systemic challenges. How do you reconcile those competing demands without sacrificing quality or long-term impact?
Yeah, I mean, there's not a quick win to that. So people and organizations and culture are things that don't change overnight. And I think that is a conversation that you would have with a client or leadership team straight off, to say, if you're expecting people change to happen in a really short space of time, the reality is very different. However, you can start sowing the seeds of that really quickly. So when we think about digital learning, we think about, these files that we've created and people, and it takes a while to do that. And the answer isn't to speed up the production of that. The answer might be, we could do some animations or some videos or some guerrilla, marketing to start building up, start ramping up that campaign. And so, you're subjecting is the wrong word, but you're exposing people to little micro piece of information, and that starts embedding in people's minds subtly.
Okay, we are flying through this today. Just a couple more questions for you. If you could reframe one of the biggest misconceptions about digital learning within the L&D profession, what would it be, and why does it matter that we challenge it now?
Honestly, the biggest misconception that I think we're up against at the minute. So I tend to think the word e-learning is a bit of a dirty word. And I think when people say the word e-learning, they have an idea in their head that it's a single screen, that it's got a click next button, and that is the process. And actually, that's the problem. People's ideas that that's what the best digital learning looks like, and it's not.
How else can folks connect with you?
The best way to connect with me is on LinkedIn. I think that's the platform.
Excellent. And it's Caleb Foster, as it sounds, listeners. So you should be able to find him pretty pretty easily. That just leaves me to say for today, Caleb, thank you very much for joining me on the pod.
Hey, thank you very much for inviting me. Really enjoyed it.